Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Sidebar Media podcast. Our guest is Bobby Lewis, and you are going to really enjoy hearing his humor and insight on being a journalist. Bobby's work started in television news, and it's taken him from his home in Tampa, Florida, to Louisiana, Oklahoma, and then back again to Tampa, where he now lives with his wife and kids. After transitioning from sports to local news at the station in Tampa, he went on to win 6 Emmy Awards for his on-the-road segments, where he got to tell the uplifting stories of outstanding people. 6 Emmy Awards. In the last year, he transitioned again from being on screen to being behind a screen as an online contributor for Family First, Tony Dungy's nonprofit organization. We're going to get Bobby's perspective on maturing as a journalist, winning those awards, and if the infamous Florida man is really all that bad. This is the Sidebar Media podcast with your hosts, Robbie and Nicole Harper, where we tell the stories of those who tell the stories.
Welcome.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I have a wife and 3 kids who could not care less that I have Emmy Awards on the show. I know you sounded excited about it, but they don't
care. Yeah, well, that's not even on their radar, like. Maybe one day they'll look back and like, Dad won 6 Emmy Awards.
I've got them in a cabinet and they're like, whoa, that's cool. Where's the cereal? They don't
or they're
care,
picking them up and using them
totally
as like swords against each other because they're kind of pointy.
Yeah. They could certainly be weapons in some kind of fort fight or something that kids would do. Awesome. But we keep them tucked away.
Did you grow up in Florida? You're from Florida originally, right?
Yeah, I was born at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. My dad was in the Coast Guard and, just having the access to the military base. I was born right there and grew up basically in Clearwater, which is on the west coast, center of Florida.
Very nice.
So USF was kind of a natural transition.
Yeah, it was nearby. I knew I was interested in television and I had options to go to University of Florida or Florida State or, Miami, all these different places if I wanted to stay in the state of Florida. But, I didn't think it would benefit me to go to a smaller town, a smaller area, when I had access to a large TV market right there in my home area. And I thought that would be more beneficial to me career-wise down the road, which it was.
Because you knew already at that point what you were aiming for. And
yeah, I knew very early on in my life that I wanted to do some sort of television, some sort of storytelling. It took me a while to figure out that visual storytelling through TV was going to be the avenue that I could, best excel. But when I found out through just some exploration, soul searching what I wanted to do, it made total sense to me to stay in Tampa. If I'm going to learn how to do television, it was better for me to do it in a market size 12, 13 at the time, whatever it was nationally, instead of go to Gainesville where it's market 150 or Tallahassee, which is super small. I mean, it didn't benefit me in my mind to learn from folks who weren't that much older than me in these smaller markets. It was better to learn from people who were in Tampa who'd been doing this 30 years. And so that's why I chose to go to USF because it was very close to a large media market.
Now, how did you know you wanted to do TV news?
There's video of me doing the morning announcements in like 4th or 5th grade at my school. And I was like, oh, look at that clown. He doesn't know what he's doing. But just having fun with it. And I always enjoyed like talking to people and meeting with people. And, as I got older, I got very interested in sports. And I realized that as much as I loved sports, I was never going to make money playing sports, which I wish I could have done. But
what sport would it have been?
Wasn't the fastest. I loved baseball. I really would love to have played baseball. I like basketball a lot as well. Tried out for the golf team, although that was never going to happen. I just wanted 2 free days of golf. So that's why I tried out for the golf team. I always liked sports, but I knew that I wasn't gifted enough athletically to play professional sports. And so I thought, how can I still be connected to the sports that I enjoy and also combine some of the storytelling passions? And it just said, all right, well, I guess reporting is going to be the way I'm going to go. Is it going to be newspaper? Is it going to be radio? Is it going to be television? And I decided TV would be more fun. And so I just kind of started, looking around, how could this happen? And in high school, I got an internship at one of the TV stations in Tampa. It was the ABC affiliate, and they were the only one in town that was interested in having a high school kid, goof around the station. And so that's how it started. I hung out there for a couple of days and said, this seems like fun. And it kind of grew from there.
Cool. Well, now, being from Florida originally and being in journalism, Nicole has a question she has been itching to ask. Like, you know,
Yeah.
So
okay, Bobby, as a fellow Floridian, we're on the same level here. My family, Robbie's 6th generation Floridian. So he's like come up from the swamps. I don't know where they came from. My family, I'm 2nd generation, but my grandparents lived here for 70 years. So I almost consider them Floridians, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when people outside of Florida make fun of Florida, I get offended. It's kind of like you can make fun of your own family, but other people can't, like, because you don't know them.
Yeah.
So, Florida man, everybody, people are always making fun of things, in Florida. I get rather offended unless you have lived here at some point. You can't make fun of our people. That's our job. So I know as a reporter, you have got to have a Florida man story. Now I Googled, the whole Florida man joke where you Google your birthday and Florida man and something comes up. Mine on my birthday was talking about domestic battery is never funny.
No.
Comma. However, he was arrested for dousing his sleeping girlfriend with a bottle of ketchup because he thought she was having an affair. I don't know why ketchup was the condiment he chose. I feel like there are a lot of others you could go with. But this Florida man decided that was his choice for my birthday. Florida man arrested after allegedly pouring ketchup on a sleeping girlfriend. I love how it still has to be allegedly. Like, I'm pretty sure it was him, but legal system, we still have to stay allegedly. So I would love to know some Florida man stories you have.
Interesting. It's weird too. The idea that like Florida is the only place people do dumb things is kind of silly. Like, there's no one dumping ketchup on anyone in Indiana. I'm sure there is somewhere, like it seems like
it's just us.
Yeah, it's just us.
We're the only ones that use ketchup.
We're the only ones. I don't know. Maybe it's all the fresh salt air from the ocean or something that makes people do crazy things. But there are weird things going on in Florida. But for me personally, I can't say that I've covered tons of those, but I have met very interesting people. I met a guy who was like 85 years old and spent most of his day on a trapeze in his backyard because he wanted to be in the circus. That was kind of odd.
At 85, that's impressive.
Yeah, well, if you think that's impressive, I rode in the car with a man who was 107 and he just renewed his driver's license. So that was harrowing. And dude had a lead foot, which was even more, interesting. And I was like, well, how long are you going to drive? And he goes, till I'm dead. I'm like, okay, awesome.
That might be today, sir. That might be today.
It could be any minute, sir. I hope it's not right here where I'm in the car with you. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of weird things going on in Florida. But, I think there's just interesting people throughout this state.
Yeah.
Well, we used to have circus. Like, it used to be like the winter retreat for circuses.
Yeah, the Ringling Brothers Circus started in Sarasota.
Yeah. And there's I think, which one of them, I think it was Ringling, not Barnum, had a winter home in Venice, I think, right? I think it was somewhere over there that there's roots in Florida of the circus.
Sounds right. And all the retired elephants from the Ringling Barnum and Bailey Circus live in Polk City now. They've retired. They live right in the center of Florida. So there's tons of elephants hanging out and nobody even knows they're there.
The elephants retired and didn't even get to go to the beach?
Nope.
I feel like you retire. You're supposed to go to the coast.
Nope, they put them right in the hottest part of Florida, right in the middle.
That doesn't, well, okay. I guess they're used to hot, but still, that doesn't feel right. Somebody should teach them to water ski or something.
I did get to feed one of those elephants by hand. That was kind of cool. They basically ate an entire loaf of bread in one bite, and I almost lost my hand. It was pretty crazy.
Strangely enough, same thing that happens when I feed my teenager.
I believe it, yeah. Whole loaf of bread.
One bite. One bite. Yeah. Almost lost my hand. Yeah. Terrifying.
What were those early days like? What was that time like just breaking in?
That time was interesting for me for many reasons. One, I was, 23 years old, whatever I was. I mean, you're the smartest dumb person right?
That is so much truth. You graduate college and you're like, I know everything. And you're like, you know nothing.
Yeah, like, nothing. You think you know stuff. My first day on the job in Lafayette, Louisiana, I showed up in town during hurricane evacuation. It was 2008 as Hurricane Gustav, September 2008. I was riding into Louisiana with my then girlfriend, who my wife eventually. We got married shortly thereafter. We're driving to Louisiana as every car in Louisiana is leaving.
Well, at least the drive was
we're
easy.
going down. Well, the drive was great. Just cruised in, just got to watch the horrendous rain. And we got there. I hadn't even signed my contract. And they handed me a camera and said, power lines are down on that road. Go. And I was like, I don't even know where that road is. So I didn't have an apartment because nobody was leasing apartments because there's a hurricane. So I had to sleep in the basement of the TV station. And they basically, hugged my girlfriend and they said, now you have to evacuate, ma'am, leave. And so we had like 3 minutes together. She left and I was stuck in Louisiana in a hurricane on my first day. So that was interesting. And then shortly thereafter, we just basically had to do all the grunt work that, young reporters have to do. And our station, unfortunately, was very small. And so everybody was carrying a very heavy load because it's the same amount of work that has to be done at the stations in New York City, but you have far less money and far fewer staff and far less experience. And so the newscast is still 30 minutes. You still have to get the show on the air, whether you have 5 employees or 105 employees. And the product is supposed to look seamless. And so it's very difficult. You're stretched thin as a young reporter, especially at that time when the idea of multimedia journalism was being introduced. And for those who don't understand what that is, it basically means there's no cameraman, there's no reporter, there's no editor. It's one person doing all of those jobs because these stations don't have the money to afford 3 employees. So they find one person who can do them all. And in a way that makes you more valuable because you have the ability and skills that could make you kind of a utility player. But in the other way, who can do 3 jobs as well as, 3 people can do one individual job? It's not feasible. As great as the best executive chef in the world can't do it all by himself. That's why he hires a sous chef. That's why he hires, a saucier. That's why they hire all these people in the kitchen to do specific jobs at a high level. So the dish that goes out is the most appealing it can be. You can try the best you can in these small markets to do great television, and you're just not capable of doing it because everyone is wearing so many hats that you can't really excel in the role that you've been hired to do. And so you kind of just have to understand that you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to do your best, and your best is going to be good enough in that day. And that's really the only way you're going to get through those first 1, 2, 3, however many years you're working in these small markets before you get a chance to move up to something bigger.
And those small markets anticipate a lot of turnover.
There's going to be plenty of turnover. Yeah. If you live in, Minot, South Dakota, or you live in Ames, Iowa, you can just expect that the faces on your local newscast are only going to be there for a year or 2, and then they're leaving because they don't want to live in these small markets. For one, they don't get paid anything. I think my first TV reporting job, I argued up to $21,000 a year. I think it was maybe 22, if I remember. I argued up to that because I went through and looked at all the apartments in the area. They offered me 18 and a half, and I said, well, I can't survive at 18 and a half. I can't literally find an apartment that I can afford for that amount of money. And so I argued up to that, and they told me, don't you dare tell the other reporters because we didn't give them this. And I was like, oh.
Now take your camera and get to your power lines.
Yeah, now go to the power lines and don't die, essentially.
Don't step on them. Don't get the water in the
there's no health insurance either. So, yeah, it's difficult. But if you really love it, you won't look at it as a hard season. You'll look at it as a growth season. And I think that's what really, solidified to me that this is what I want to do with my life, because if I didn't love it and I didn't want to do it, it'd be really easy to quit in those first couple of years.
So I'm imagining you're covering sports in Louisiana or Oklahoma. And, I think so many people think that there's this big crew that you come and that come with you and help you set up and this and that, when if you're covering high school football on Friday night lights somewhere, and you've got to bring the camera, you got to set up, you got to do this, and people don't realize that not everybody has the van that goes out with the cameraman and that kind of thing. That it's just it's a lot of work. And some of the, having a public relations company, there's been a few times where I've seen that, where somebody's come on site and interviewed someone, and I felt bad. Like, this reporter, this lady is carrying, this huge camera and all this equipment and everything. And I'm like, can I help you? And she's like, no, I got it. I do this all the time. like, I feel bad, but it's, they're used to it. And plus I would, want to possibly break a $100,000 or tens of $1,000 camera. That's not something, they're used to doing that and not me. But you mentioned you liked sports. I mean, what, growing up that you played baseball or fan of sports, what was it that you enjoyed about covering sports?
The best part about covering sports is that the worst thing that happens is you win or lose. That's it. It's almost divorced from real life. There are so many reporters who would show up at a television station or at a newspaper or whatnot. They show up 9:00 on Monday morning and they say, "Oh, a sheriff's deputy hit and killed on the interstate. Go." And you're like, "Oh, that's not how I wanted to spend my day." And then you look at the sports office and you're like, "Hey, the Rays won tonight, or the Orlando Magic won tonight, or the Lightning won tonight," or whatever. You
I'm
pick
sorry,
your team
the
that you
Orlando
like.
Magic does not win. I'm sorry.
That's true. Never, that's a bad example. Sorry, bad example. But your team won tonight, or so and so lost tonight. That it's really not that serious. And I know that, especially in America, we tend to take sports very seriously. I mean, to the point where every year there's some kind of story where, this big rivalry game, Auburn, Alabama, War Eagle, Roll Tide, someone gets shot and killed because their team lost, because it's so serious to these people. And it's like, man, do you not understand that it's a game that people are playing as entertainment? And so when we get to cover these stories and we get to go talk about these teams and these games, you really get to reorient yourself and say, how lucky am I to just get to be a part of the experience that brings so many people joy? That's really a pretty nice gig to have if you have it. I mean, I got paid to go watch football games on Sunday, and I got paid to spend my evenings watching, professional hockey or professional baseball or whatever it is, and just enjoy the experience, and then get to talk to the players after the game that fans at home buy their shirts because they love them, or they wear their jerseys on Sundays because they idolize Brett Favre or whoever their favorite player is. And they have these shirts and like, oh yeah, I know the person, because we get a chance to have access to them in a way that's very, very intimate, and get to share who they are, at least a little glimpse of who they are, with the fans back at home who really enjoy watching them play. And so that becomes very special. And it almost is its own little world, to where for just a little bit, you can forget that sheriff deputy got hit today for just a little bit of time. Or you can forget that the hurricane just knocked over someone's house. Or you can forget that, the house burned down and now 3 kids are homeless. Like, you can forget those things. It doesn't mean they don't happen, but you're somewhat disconnected from the reality of all the sad, evil things that go on in the world. And you can just focus in for 2 or 3 hours a night on what brings people happiness. And that was the best part about doing sports.
I think we need those distractions in order to function, and in order to keep functioning in a world that's really challenging.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize too, that the people that the reporters that have to cover those stories, the hard ones of somebody, I spoke with somebody who was, she was covering a human interest story like you've covered. We'll get into that in a moment. But she's like, this kind of thing, it's so uplifting, because just earlier this week, I covered 2 murders, and, the general public doesn't realize how much that wears on reporters. I mean, it's their job and they do it well, but I mean, at some point it's like a drumbeat that you want to end at some point. And when there is a story that comes that's refreshing, I mean, or to talk about sports, or, when the anchors hand it off to the sports report after kind of a heavy evening, I'm sure it's sort of a breath of fresh air.
There's a reason that newscasts are structured in the way that they are structured. They're broken up into what's called blocks. So you have an A block, B block, C block, and then the blocks are separated by commercial breaks. Weather is always in the C block, and so that is essentially placed at the end of the show towards the end of the show, to keep people watching, because weather is really the only thing that affects every viewer. The A block is typically the biggest story of the day. You want to lead with the biggest story, but the second biggest story you leave for the top of the B block, so that people will stay through the commercial break. And then you tease ahead to weather to get them to stay through that commercial break. And then sports is supposed to be this like icing on the cake, let's feel good about life. We did talk about all these other things, but then let's just talk about the fun stuff at the end to kind of wrap up and put a bow on the evening. It's all done strategically. And it's really kind of by design to get people to stay engaged throughout the whole newscast. But, back to your point about those who have to cover those events. I mean, if you've ever experienced the loss of a loved one and how painful that can be, imagine being the reporter who's tasked with, oh, go ask so-and-so what it feels like to have their kid hit by a lawnmower. Well, what do you think it feels like to have your kid get hit by a lawnmower? Like, it's kind of cruel for us to, I'll use the word exploit. In many ways, we exploit the pain and the suffering of people for the informative entertainment, call it infotainment of others, if you will, because quite honestly, like I said, weather is the only thing that affects everybody. Your heart can go out and you can feel sadness and empathy for someone whose child was hit by the lawnmower, but you're probably never going to meet that person. You don't know them directly. You'll move on with your day, but the only thing that's happened is, you've consumed this just very sad information that just punches your heart just a little bit. And then the next day, oh, it punches your heart again. And it punches your heart again. And after a while, if you're the reporter who's the one wearing the gloves, you're like, wow, all I'm doing is just punching people in the heart every single day. And whose life is being uplifted by this? Now, that's not all of what reporting is. A lot of reporting is very important information that helps you, figure out how to hold politicians accountable or, who needs to get elected or whatever. Those are important things, but you can't expect as a general assignment news or television reporter or, writer for a newspaper or whatever to not have days where you just feel like the whole point of your 8-hour workday was to deliver a punch to the heart for somebody. And it's very difficult. And a lot of people burn out and they quit because they realize that day after day, they're not doing as much good as they thought they were going to do. And they're not really making the change that they originally thought they would when they got into the career.
Well, I think that kind of transitions into, heart punching and dealing with the challenge of that. You went from sports into what you earned your Emmys for, and that was for telling human interest stories that actually show people doing good in the world and give us kind of like that endorphin boost like sports will do.
Well, that I'll say that I did transition into doing those, but it wasn't my choice. I would have preferred to continue to do sports because of the reasons I laid out. The worst thing that happens is, oh, the Magic lost tonight. Oh, well, like they play again in 2 nights. That was what I wanted to do. We're all used to that. but like pick your favorite team. Oh, they lost. Oh, darn. They play again in a couple of days. Like that's where I wanted to live. And basically they came to me, the management at my station in Tampa said, yeah, we don't really think we need 3 people in our sports department. You're the newest hire. So you're out unless you want to stay and do news. And at the time, my son was about to be born, like, I think 2 months later. And I was like, well, paychecks are pretty good. So I probably should get a paycheck, at least for now. And I can look for another sports job somewhere else. And when I find it, I'll just quit this job and move and do sports somewhere else, which was kind of a hard thing to do. Because at the time I was living in Tampa and I wanted to be in that area for, my family was in that area and, my friends were in that area. I grew up in that area. It was a destination for me. And so I didn't really want to leave, but I also really wanted to do sports. And I entertained moving. But after I started doing news, I realized that this was not going to last. Like I did not want to be doing that day in and day out unless I could do it on my terms. And so I went to the management and I said, I see an opportunity to tell stories of people in our community that no one's really telling. We don't have the dedicated reporter to go talk to the child who just raised $10,000 for cancer research because his little brother got diagnosed with leukemia. No one's telling that story, and it's a part of your community. We're doing a disservice to our viewers by only covering the if it bleeds, it leads type of stuff. It's a small fraction of what actually is going on in our community, but we pump it up to the point where it seems like it's the only thing happening in our community. And yet, there are kids down the street who are doing something great, or there's a guy who just made an app that helps people who are deaf, or there's someone over here who just, has decided out of the goodness of his heart, he's going to mow everyone's lawn in the neighborhood because there's a lot of older people who can't do it. Like there's these stories in every neighborhood, in every city in America and throughout the world where people are doing something selfless for others, and yet they're not getting the recognition for it. They probably would never seek it out, That's probably not why they originally started mowing the lawns for the neighbors. But if someone feels like their story is impacting others in a positive way, then I feel like we should share that story. And so that's what I pitched. And they were like, no one's going to want to watch that. I'm like, are you sure? Because someone felt strongly enough about it to email me about it and say, you should talk to this young kid who just raised $10,000 for cancer research. And I said, let me try it.
That's a surprising response.
Let me give me.
Maybe I shouldn't be surprised.
There was this. Well, it's just
different.
It's always been done this way. So why change it? Type of mentality. And my view on it was, well, if you want to grow, you got to try new things. And so I pitched these stories. A lot of it was self-serving because I didn't want to do the other stuff. I wanted to do the good stuff. But either way, once I started doing it and I pitched one or two stories, people were like, oh, well, that got a lot of clicks on our Facebook page. Or, oh, wow, that was really quite popular. People emailed in about that. Or, oh, my goodness, I got more emails because so-and-so is doing something similar. And it very quickly became apparent to the management who was totally against it in the beginning that, oh, there's an appetite for this. And over the course of my final 7 years at the CBS station in Tampa, I was nominated for 12 Emmy Awards for that segment and won 6 of them, which is an extreme, for those who just don't know, like it's an extremely high conversion rate. To be nominated is extremely difficult. The judgment is on a bunch of different categories. You're judged by peers across the country, and there's a rating scale of 0 to 10. And for each category. So a total of 30 possible points. And just to be nominated, you have to get 25 out of 30. And to win, you have to get 27 out of 30. In all these disciplines, there's visual, there's writing, and there's composition. There's really high standards for being nominated. And so to be nominated 12 times, I thought was amazing. And then to actually win 6 times, I was just blown away. And I never would have expected that because I'm not really someone who's an award seeker. But it was great, accolade to receive and just confirmation.
I mean, you're not an award seeker, but if they're going to hand them out, you might as well take one, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely someone who appreciates the recognition from peers who understand the difficulty that it takes or the amount of work involved in creating a story that touches someone's heart and doing it at a high level, It's kind of like the all-star game for baseball. Like you're voted upon by the fans, but the players also get votes. The players are someone who also show respect to their peers on the field and say, yeah, so-and-so didn't get voted by the fans. Maybe he's not the most popular, but he's definitely deserving. He's played really well this year. And so you get the opportunity to do that. I think that that's the most humbling and wonderful part of having those particular awards is that they're voted upon by peers in the industry. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah. What was one of those stories is kind of out of all of them, it's one that sticks out in your mind?
My favorite story that I've ever done was about one of the favorite people I've ever met. And unfortunately, this young man has passed away. He was, when I met him, 8 years old, I believe, 7 or 8 years old. His name is Eric Pyburn. And I worked at a CBS station. And so we had access to a lot of different national CBS programming. And this child was born from the moment he was born, needing a double lung and heart transplant. He was born with a hole in his heart. His lungs didn't function properly. And so he was very sick, obviously. And so he didn't get to go to traditional school because if he got sick, it could spell the end of his life. And so he didn't get the same educational experience and camaraderie with his peers. The way he learned numbers, math, spelling was by watching The Wheel of Fortune on TV with his mom.
Wow.
And because The Wheel of Fortune was on CBS, I had the opportunity to connect him with Vanna White. And I met this young man, the most jovial, incredibly, happy person that you'll ever meet, who you would not have even known that he was terminally ill from the moment he was born. The doctors, when he was born, told his mom, enjoy the first year. He probably won't need a cake on his first birthday. Just enjoy whatever time you get. And he lived to be 15 years old. And I really do believe a lot of that was due to the fact that every moment was a gift and he embraced it as such. And there was joy in every doctor's appointment. There was joy in every movie he watched. Whatever he was doing, he was just happy. And we got a chance to introduce him to Vanna White. And that kid was so thrilled to meet this woman that he watched on TV every night. I actually wrote a book in 2018 called Finding Joy Beyond the Headlines. And it's about finding God in the news. And he was one of the stories in the Perseverance chapter. And Vanna White endorsed the book because of the fact that Eric was featured in the book. She respected and loved him so much because of that. And he was a fighter, and sadly he fought as long as he could, but his little body couldn't handle it anymore, and he passed away at 15. And it was just a really cool thing. One of the Emmys that I won was for the story we did with him meeting Vanna White. And don't tell the Academy that I gave him the award. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to keep the award. It says on the bottom of the trophy, this is property of the owner, and if it ever leaves their possession, it's supposed to be returned to the Academy. But I said, forget that. This boy's terminally ill. I don't care about your little plaque on the bottom of the trophy. He's going to have it. So unfortunately, He passed away, and now his mom has that trophy on the shelf at their house.
The Academy doesn't want that kind of PR. They're not going to get mad about that, right?
Yeah. If you got a problem with it, you can call me, but I'm not taking it back. So, yeah, he was a very special young man. And I think those are the types of stories people want to see, not because the kid was terminally ill, but because he embraced life as a gift. And that's the sort of way we all should look at it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's like, you wonder when you're in a career and you're doing things and you wonder why you do, am I making an impact? And then something like that happens and it's amazing.
Well, I mean, I can't say that too many people have invited me to their birthday party after I did an interview, and he did. So I feel like it was a good connection. So he's like, will you please come to my birthday party? So, I mean, that was special.
Listen, if you're invited to a kid's birthday party, that's like being asked to attend a red carpet event. Like you've ranked somewhere. So that's pretty, it's pretty high ranking.
Yeah, there's so many stories. That was the first one that came to mind, but I've met so many people that just embrace life and love life. And everyone, I think, has a story. And in my opinion, everyone's story needs to be told. It doesn't mean they want it told. But I think it's worthy of telling everyone's story because, if we just hear the same things over and over again, life's going to get stale. I think we need to hear every single person's approach to life and then just see how God has blessed them in their life and how they're using their skills and abilities to uplift others. I just think we should be approaching whatever couple of years we get on this earth in that perspective.
You're continuing to tell stories in a different format these days.
Unfortunately, had just a opportunity to seek different things. I didn't work out at Channel 10 and ended up leaving in November of 2021 and totally fine that it worked out that way. I firmly believe that's what God wanted for me in my life. But it was a little bit of a difficult transition period because, you pour your heart into these sort of things, and any kind of a breakup is difficult, whether it's personal or relational or whatever. And so, when you spend 13 years of your life dedicated to doing one thing and then it's taken away, you got to find another avenue to use the skills that God's given you to benefit other people. And so I looked around for a lot of different things, had a lot of job opportunities, and I turned a lot of them down. I was dedicated to staying in the Tampa area because my family lives here. And also I'm very involved with my church and, have a lot of opportunities with that I wanted to stick with and see through. And so I looked for opportunities here and landed on one that I think is going to be a great thing, which is working at an organization called Family First. And its entire purpose is to provide parenting, marriage, and relational truth that helps people love their family well and give them greater hope for the future. So I can think of no better way to spend your life than trying to build strong families.
And part of Family First, some people might recognize All Pro Dad is Tony Dungy's organization that he started, which kind of falls under that Family First umbrella. And that's the department where you're going to be working or are working now. So tell us a little bit about All Pro Dad and then how you're telling stories.
Yeah, well, if you can picture an umbrella, Family First is the name of the parent organization. And underneath the umbrella are two programs. One of them you mentioned is All Pro Dad. And that was started by Mark Merrill and Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy potentially is a Super Bowl winning coach. He coached for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and for the Indianapolis Colts. And then on the other side of the umbrella is iMom, which is essentially the exact same program, but All Pro Dad is geared towards dads and iMom is geared towards moms. And what those two programs aim to do is to just provide every child with the opportunity to know the love of a mom and a dad. And just to have that support system for a child, which is such an important thing, to know that someone has your back and someone has your best interest in mind. Not every child has that opportunity. And it was very important for Tony Dungy and Mark Merrill and Mark's wife, Susan, to make sure that they were doing everything they could to provide that feeling of security and love to children all across the country. And it has grown in incredible ways since it started almost 3 decades ago. And Tony Dungy's been a big part of that. And I really think that being able to, work with Tony, I've known him a long time, but being able to work with him now in this capacity is really a great thing, to tell stories of families who have been benefited by a lot of the programming and the articles that are written and the videos that are done by Family First that really teach parents how to love their kids well. I think that's just going to be the most fun thing. I'm still fairly new to it, but I can already tell it's going to be an awesome thing. And I'm looking forward to partnering with Tony in that way and just sharing people's stories and encouraging moms and dads to love their kids well.
So this sounds like it's been a good transition as far as you were telling those uplifting human interest stories at your affiliate in Tampa, and now you are transitioning. It feels like a natural transition. You're falling into this family first family,
Yep.
family first family, and still able to use those storytelling muscles that you have exercised so well.
Yeah. Well, it's a little different now because it's primarily written. So I'll be doing a lot of writing and a lot of stories that'll be told that way. I'll be doing some video as well. And the plan is to introduce an All Pro Dad podcast at some time in 2023 where we will be able to interview people with sports backgrounds, but also strong fathers, people like Tony Dungy and others who are supporters of Family First. I think it's going to be an awesome opportunity to really equip parents with things that will help them in their day-to-day journey through parenting. Because anyone who's a parent knows it is not easy, and there's not a playbook for it. So if you can at least draw on the experience of others and use that experience to your advantage in the way that you raise your kids, what a powerful tool. And so that's what I'm looking forward to doing, is writing and podcasting and video production that's going to really be geared towards, building strong families.
Well, that's important work. I mean, that's probably some of the most important work you can do in impacting families, because that I still believe that the family unit is so incredibly important to our culture, to our country, to do work to encourage that. And that's what you're doing. And I completely appreciate that.
Yeah. And the statistics don't lie. I mean, if they're very easily accessible, parents, kids who have two parents in the home tend to be on a much faster road to success. Parents who have either two parents in the home, but they're disengaged, or parents who are not involved have less success. And children who are in a home with one parent have even, greater risk of poverty and depression and dropping out of school and drug use and all those sort of things. So the more we can encourage parents to be strong and connected and united in their front and their mission to raise children who are going to be loving members of society and servants to others, that's going to really uplift entire communities. And so if you can start there, you're going to benefit your kids in an amazing way. That's the goal.
And then equipping those families who find themselves in different situations with tools of how to, you found yourself here. What can we do to help you and encourage you and get you going?
Well, I mean, families aren't cookie cutters. Families come in all shapes and sizes, and no matter what they look like, families ultimately have the same goal, which is to raise children to love others and to be the best they can be. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be as easy in some families as others. Some it'll be harder just through circumstances. If you're a single parent, you probably have to work more and you won't be home as much. If your child has some kind of an illness and they require lots of doctor's appointments, that's going to be taxing on your finance. There's so many different ways in which families are trying to run the race well. But there's potholes in every road. And so the point of All Pro Dad and I Mom at Family First is to really see the potholes and to help people understand how to avoid them as best as possible and still run the race well.
Now, Bobby, a question I have for you is kind of the basis of our podcast is you've been a journalist for many years and you've done it in many different forms. In your experience, what is something you wish that average people knew about journalists? We were talking about this before we started recording about how, they're regular people and we tend to get in a bubble and think that they only exist behind the byline or the TV presence is the only thing you see. So what would you, that's a loaded question. As a former teacher, that was a very poorly worded question. I apologize to all of my professors from years ago, but okay. What would you want people to know about a look behind who you are for a journalist?
I don't know that I can speak for every single reporter, but I can speak for many of the ones that I've come in contact with, even the ones that I disagreed with on, politics or something else. Every reporter that I know is just doing the best job they can. And they're just trying their best to tell the story the way they've been either instructed to tell the story, not with a slant or anything. That's not what I mean by that. But I mean, just telling it in a visual way or in a written way. They're doing their best to tell the story the best way they possibly can. And most of the journalists that I know are doing it as objectively as possible. Now, when you get into like national media, you're going to get a little more of a slant. You're going to get people who are going to write a certain way. If you work at the New York Times, it's not going to sound the same as if you work at, a different paper. If you work at CNN, it's not going to sound the same as Fox News. And I get that. And people rightly have gripes about the bias that they can perceive to see in those places. But on a local level, at most outlets, people are just trying to do the job the best that they can. And they're real people with real kids, real families, and they're driving the road.
And they're driving the same roads and pulling through the same Chick-fil-A drive-through that you are.
I would look at, athletes back in the day. Just a regular guy, like, the quarterback of your favorite team goes through the car line to pick up his kids just like you do. They're not any different. They just happen to do a job that's public. And in many ways, that opens you up to scrutiny, whether you're a football player or you're a newspaper reporter. If you have a public job and people are able to figure out who produced this product and can, gripe about it if they don't see it, as meeting all of their needs, then you're opening yourself up to criticism in many ways. And I remember writing an article back in the day about Michael Vick, the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, who went to jail for dogfighting and got out of jail, and he got an opportunity, actually under the tutelage of Tony Dungy and the mentorship of Tony Dungy, to play in the NFL again. And people were super upset about it because how dare he get another chance? He's making millions of dollars and he killed all these dogs. And I thought, forgiveness is what we're supposed to be about. I'm glad that he gets another chance. Now, you're not going to get a third chance, but I mean, if you're getting a second chance, make the most of it. And I'm proud. I'm happy for the guy. And I got so many people ticked off that I would dare to say, I hope the guy gets a second chance and makes the most of it. And you know what? It's just comes with the territory, is being able to give your opinion or share your thoughts on something. You can't please everyone. And if you're living for the approval of others, you'll die by their rejection. And I don't think that we should be living to, just appease or get the approval or gain the satisfaction from fellow man. I just don't think that's ever going to work.
And in the journalism world, I can imagine one day you're there and potentially the next day you're not. So why are we getting so fired up?
It's true. A couple questions to wrap up that we'll get you out on. The first is, if you could talk to the Bobby Lewis who first got that job as a sports reporter in Louisiana, what would you tell Bobby Lewis back then?
I would tell 23-year-old standing in a hurricane in Louisiana, Bobby Lewis, you're not that good
Don't
yet.
step on the power lines. One, that's what you
that would be the first thing to say. Yes. But the second thing is you're not that good yet. And that's a thing that I think, or I'm 37 now. I think that the 50-year-old me would look back at 37-year-old Bobby and say, you're not that good yet. And not that it's meant as a cut down. It's just, you don't know what you don't know. Enjoy the experience, do the best as you can, but be willing and open to constructive criticism. Because when I remember specifically sitting in a news meeting with someone in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I had just graduated from college, so my chest is puffed up a little bit, right? And I had an internship at a top 15 TV market in the country. I worked part-time at this station as well. So I got paid to work in market 12 as a 20-year-old kid. And, I roll into market 123 thinking I'm hot stuff. And I'm in this meeting and the guy that we're talking to says, yeah, we're going to do it this way and we're going to structure the show like this. And I felt the need to speak up and say, that doesn't work. That won't work. And I was wrong. And because of what I perceived was a superior intellect, just because of the, small experiences that I'd had up to that point in college and in this bigger market, I was puffed up thinking that I was better than I was. And if I went back now and I watched the first couple of stories I did in Louisiana, I would laugh at it and say, did a middle school student put that together? Like, that's garbage, like there's probably some kid down the school at your kid's high school that can make a better video than I made. Right. So I think that's an important lesson is no matter how good you think you are, someone's better. And there's an opportunity for you to improve yourself day after day. Hold yourself to your own standard, not to the standard of your neighbor. And, that's part of the reason I like golf so much is that you can't blame anybody for that ball going off the tree but you. You're the only one that hit it there. And so it's the same thing with professionally. If you get real caught up in comparing yourself to others, you're going to be disappointed. So you're not that good yet. Just quietly go to work and get better.
What do you want your kids to say at your funeral? What are they going to say about Bobby, or what would you want them to say?
Well, I certainly don't want my tombstone to say 6 Emmy Awards. I'll be very upset if it says that somehow.
Well, they'll be broken because they'll be used as like fort fighting.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway. That's true. I will be so upset if at the end of my life, the tombstone reads Emmy Award winning reporter. That's not who I want to be. That's what I did. That's not who I am. And I think there's a huge distinction between what you do and who you are. There's something I've been meaning to, think through the last couple of months. And I'm going to be preaching at my church on this very topic in a couple of weeks. And it is the importance of relationship is greater than your reputation, and your reputation is greater than your resume. But we have this sort of twisting of the values of this, especially in the United States, this twisting of your work determines your worth. And that's so wrong. It's not even close to correct. Your worth and your inherent value come from above. And, you are special and valued because God made you that way. Not because of what you accomplished, or not because of how many Emmy Awards you won, or, how many high school Hall of Fames you've been inducted, or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter what the accolade is. When you die, your tombstone is probably not going to say that. And in my opinion, it's far more important to focus your life on relationships than your resume. Because quite honestly, most of us are not going to create a product that's going to be used for the next 5,000 years. But we're going to all impact our children that will then impact their children and their children and their children. And perhaps in that respect, your legacy will last for 5,000 years because you laid the foundation of putting others first and making sure that we didn't live life just for ourselves. And so it's a long answer, but good. I think that's the way that I want to be remembered. I don't want my kids to say, "Oh yeah, Dad was a TV reporter." I want them to say, "Right, yeah, he was home for dinner."
Yep, that will.
Important.
That'll
That's
preach.
Good. Well, and you are, I think you are living that life, and it comes across. Sounds like in your family, in your work, and it all culminates and works together, and that's awesome. And we appreciate it, Bobby. Thank you so much for chatting with us and talking. And we learned a lot, and I hope people listening learned a lot. And good luck with Family First, and to cheer you on and to see those stories and the things that you're going to create using those, as Nicole said, that storytelling muscle that you've built over these years. So thank you.
Cheering you on.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm eager to listen to a couple of these podcast episodes and see how we can learn more about storytelling, because everyone's got one. I just want to hear more stories.
That's right. That's right. Well, thanks again, Bobby. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Sidebar Media Podcast, brought to you by Blue Bridge PR. If you would, please like and subscribe and check out some more information about today's guest. We'll see you next time.